Hey, what's up guys? It's Bronson. Now we have an awesome video for you guys here today. It's something that I've already done a little bit of work on, but we are doing a color realistic pin-up styled female portrait. So you'll be able to see shortly that down below we have a look at some of this black and gray work that I've done of some kind of old school fighter pilots. So this work is a few weeks healed, and I think it's always really important and great if we can have a look at different artists' healed results. So I think it's quite cool that you guys can see that there. So we did split this into the two sessions, one for the black and gray, and then now we're getting into this color realistic portrait. So being quite a big piece and obviously color realism, it does take a little bit longer, and I knew that I wanted a nice fresh start on a clean day when getting into this piece. Just like all of my content, this video is absolutely packed with all of my pro tips, and I do share my thought process throughout the video. I reckon this video I probably shared more than ever. If there's one video to watch, this is the one. Now also, I have some huge news to announce with you guys. Our online community is now live, which is the Real Tattoo Academy. Now this is a space that I've set up for artists who want to improve, who really want to take control of their tattoo career. If you've been learning so much and improving so much from this free content that I have on YouTube, imagine your improvements with my direct guidance. So these improvements are going to be capable with access to one-on-one coaching with myself through video calls, as well as my guidance through messages. There's also member exclusive videos. So just like these YouTube videos, we have some that are locked away just for our community members. We also have a Discord that is absolutely packed with all of these tools to help you guys improve, as well as now get the guidance from other community members. We can talk about all things tattooing. There's rooms for tattoo machines and equipment. We have an area with study notes. You can post up your artwork and your tattoo work. But I don't want to bore you guys with all of the details now. If you do want to check it out, take control of your tattoo career and consistently improve your work, then have a look in the video description down below. I'll make sure I put a link there. But enough of all that, let's get into it. Okay, here we are just sizing up our stencil, making sure that it's fitting and lining up with the previous piece as well. And then when I'm happy with where it's placed, I'm just gonna put some marking on the skin. This just really helps a lot of confidence when I'm applying that stencil, with no hesitation on where to put it and overthinking anything. I'm just able to focus on placing my stencil well. As you can see, I line these points up, and then I can just push that down, working my way from the middle and then pushing out. Now with these inkjet styled stencils, I do really like to use a alcohol wipe just to really help push that stencil pigment off the paper and onto the skin a bit more. It definitely makes your stencil a little bit darker and hold that much better. Just like you can see here, this is a really good looking stencil, and it's going to hold a little bit better than these inkjet style stencils typically would. Now the biggest advice that I could ever give you in your whole tattoo career is if you mark the skin with an extremely purple or like high chroma color, make sure that you do try and knock it off a little bit at the start, because otherwise you're going to take a photo of your tattoo and those marks will definitely still be there, especially if it's above your tattoo. So those areas you're not really going to be wiping over. So do try and knock that pigment back from the pen before you start. Now here for this tattoo, I am using my latest machine, which was sent in from Cheyenne, and that is the Cheyenne Sol Nova Unlimited 2, and I'm running this at about 7.5 volts and on the responsive 1 setting. It is a very effective kind of saturating and packing machine, so I do really want to soften and allow myself multiple passes in certain areas. So yeah, just running the machine a little bit softer and a little bit lighter really suits my style of tattooing. Now I'm just starting off with my 7 round liner extra tight, and I'm really just focusing on working from dark to light throughout this piece. With color tattoos especially, I know I need to use a lot of light values. That will be a high priority of me working through this tattoo, to really pick large sections and work from my dark to light in that area. As if you do white black over some lighter values, you can risk contaminating and muddying that pigment up, so you really want to avoid that. And that is also true for high chroma colors being able to muddy and contaminate lighter values as well. Now here we can have a quick look at how I mix color. I was taught very early on in my tattoo career that dipping into multiple ink caps before touching the skin is a really good habit, and I still really use this whenever I tattoo color, and even black and gray, you'll see I dip into multiple caps. So I really do start off with maybe an underlying hue, which you could see I dipped into kind of a yellowish kind of skin tone there before dipping into my greens to more accurately find the true color that I'm looking for. And you can see I dipped into all three of my greens there and kind of just mixed up the ratio as I go. And then at times I would then dip into white to kind of wash that down, desaturate the color a little bit. And yeah, there's just a lot of tips like that. And then you would see at the end of that clip, I rinsed my needle out and then kind of tucked it into that little holder there. So they are really helpful, especially for tattooing color, as very quickly color starts to build up on the outside of your cartridge, especially white and some of these other values. So it's really nice and really healthy for your workflow on creating a productive tattoo session if you are just finding a system to keep your workstation tidy, so whenever you need to pick up a cartridge, it's ready to go. You don't want to have to spend a few minutes each time cleaning things out, hard out, really slowing down the process. And you can see here this color is really nice. It's kind of like a washed down emerald green, and now I've whitened it a little bit more. So one of my biggest pieces of advice when tattooing color is to really just try and always work with the ink that's in your cartridge. So I can start off, because I want to work from my highest level of chroma and my darkest value, I can always just be kind of mixing in a little bit of white or something that's relevant to find my next color and my next value that I need to apply in this tattoo. So starting from that really deep emerald green, that is my darkest value for my greens. And if I want more of a mid-tone, all I need to do is hit that with a little bit of white to bring that a little bit lighter in value, and now I have that I can place into all the mid-tone ranges. If I need that a little bit lighter again, I can either add more white, but now that I've added quite a bit of white, I might need to work on my color and that kind of hue that's there as well. I might need to find a little bit more yellows, because I don't want to create anything that's too minty. So to kind of control where this is really sitting in a hue range. Another huge piece of advice is that color adjustment is often really fragilely done with using these kind of off-white values. And that's things like a really light blue, a light pink. They're going to give a slight hit of that kind of hue into your next color. Lighter colors will start to, especially white, really start hurting the chroma level there. So you're going to really be dropping how much color pigment is in that value. So deeper tones and stuff, if you do want a bright color, stay away from white and mix kind of deep hues with deep hues, you know. Yeah, really rich colors with rich colors is a really vibrant value. Realistically, a lot of values will have like these really nice tones. Like you'll be surprised if you just sit down one day with a really light blue and a really light pink and mix that with kind of some skin colors and all these other values, you'll create a color that you see so much of in your tattoo reference. And often it's really difficult when you really try overthinking this color that you're seeing, because you are seeing kind of hues washed down, kind of like a base layer, and then some more dominant values and stuff on top of that. So there is a little bit of layering in colors as well. Don't try and really just narrow down that color like too much. You know, there's still a little bit of adjustments you can do with multiple passes and stuff like that. Just like how I paint, I just really want to get the process going and flowing and just kind of start that thought process and start finding all these colors, you know, like stumbling across them all. And when you have these really nice and close values, it is using kind of these like really off-white values and mixing other colors together to create some kind of like off grays, maybe like some really warm grays, and some slight green hues that are in the skin. So some of these nice green values, especially some really light ones, that are just going to softly adjust the color that you've got. I'm sure dipping into like, yeah, that light pink, the light blue, the light green, when you have a skin value and then dipping into this, it is like a contrasting color. So it is going to like gray out slightly, you know, but it's a very realistic value that you see kind of in nature and real life, where your level of saturation isn't quite as high. It is a very natural and earthy looking skin tone. Now, like I was talking about at the start of the video, I am moving up a little bit, so I really want to focus on getting my blacks in here so that I don't contaminate any skin or light values that are going to be sitting below this area. So just making sure that I pack that in. And I know a lot of you guys keep saying in the comments like, oh, I really wanted to learn how to tattoo here, and then I kind of just skip through it. For me, it's kind of like, it seems simple. It really is one of those things when you stop overthinking it. It is very simple, but I'm going to make sure not to skip through tattooing the hair. So if you do want to learn a little bit about that, make sure that you stick around. You can see here that I'm just packing in some of my lighter values and some of these skin values, starting off with a rough range. I haven't packed in my highest chroma or my deepest red yet. I'm starting at about kind of mid to dark on my level of saturation, and then I can still add in my highlights on top of that and get a little bit deeper and richer in some of these warmer areas and kind of like more shaded areas. Starting in this range is great, especially for finding kind of your realistic and really nice values. I don't tattoo color often, so I'm really just jumping into this piece, and I want to just keep putting ink into the skin to keep this piece progressing. So I'm kind of relying on staying in a safe range at first color wise before I can really start figuring out what's going on with this piece. I have my skin values, and then I'm kind of adding in some more yellow hues to kind of contrast from some of these warmer and deeper areas. So I've identified that I have this kind of like greenish yellow hue that's sitting, and it's quite light, you can see that value there, that's sitting as my kind of light, and I'm going to say like kind of my averagely lit area. And then in my deeper, kind of more shaded areas, I do have a much deeper looking red, a much warmer area. But it's important that I identify that yellow, and that can be quite scary to add into portraits and stuff like that. But we needed some contrast away from just that warm value that's sitting there. Now, the warm value, it does look so good, but just like everything, we need something to contrast against that to make that kind of warm and richness really stand out. So without having that kind of yellow hue in my more lit and light value areas, it's just not going to appear as strong. Now we're shading under the chin, and this is with a black value working into kind of an extra dark and deep red. You'll see that I wipe off to the side there, making sure to not wipe down and contaminate into those values, because I can assure you it will muddy those up really quickly, desaturating them, turning them gray, and kind of like you probably will see a speckly black sitting there as well. So now we're getting into an extra dark here. This is the kind of like black dipped into a very deep red. It's just allowing that black to transition a little bit, but also have so much warmth and kind of richness in that value there. You can see here already it's pulling so nicely out of that shadow, and now that I'm getting more of a light value packed in up against it, it's looking really nice. And before I forget, you'll see that I did put in the line under the chin there with the black. That was with a 13 curved mag. I always want to see a really soft edge at this point, as it kind of the neck area and that shadow line kind of really starts to curve up onto the face. I'm really against seeing liners used in this area, as I just think that it puts far too harsh of an edge on that just doesn't seem too realistic. Now I'm using my white in this area, and I'm using a 7 round shader. Now, a lot of round shaders aren't very good and they're quite hard to use, but this is from Metrics, and I do highly rate the round shader. I didn't used to like the needle, but yeah, the 7 round shader from Metrics has actually made me start using a round shader daily, and it's a very useful tool if you have a good round shader. I'm sure there's some other good brands out there, but I was struggling to find them in the past. And I'm using, putting in all this white just so that this area is complete and I can just forget about it and start moving up. As well as this would be pretty sore if I really waited until the end of the day to drop so far down on this piece. It's really funny as well, like I saturate my black and gray so much that I feel like I did this tattoo at the same speed I would have tattooed it in black and gray, which is like, that's crazy to me. You know, color, I always thought was, well, it did always take me a lot longer, but now I'm really trying to like tattoo black and gray crazy and figure out all these things. And so I'm either really fast at tattooing realistic color, or I'm really slow at tattooing black and gray color. Now, I'm probably not really slow because there's some super slow artists out there. But yeah, let me know if you think this is fast. So I think it was like, when did we finish? I guess 7 hours of tattooing, and this piece is on the inner arm. So it's like pretty big, pretty detailed. There's a lot of factors. I didn't like skip out detail on the hair or anything like that. Speaking of the hair, before you guys tell me off for the 100th time, so yeah, here we are. This is what you guys wanted, some real-time tattooing hair footage. So you can see I am using my 13 curved mag, and I'm really focusing on how I've got this mag kind of angled and just creating angles with it and just brushing out these shadows. So really just start off like we do with any kind of process in our tattooing. Start off with our darkest, kind of deepest shadow, you know. This is going to be our kind of blurriest area where some of these forms of the hair are really going to start disappearing into and kind of appearing from. So we want to start by mapping in these areas, you know, quite often these kind of like warped triangle shapes, you know, so the mag fits these kind of triangle areas really well, starting from some of these points. Kind of like don't overthink your forms either, you know, just let the mag really do its thing. If it's not able to kind of curve so much, then maybe just follow your mag's instincts rather than the reference detail so much. If you do want to get a little bit more specific or detailed there, you can really use the edge of your mag a lot more, singling out a few needles. Or if you want, start off with a liner and map in some of these forms and get some of those flicks in as well. But you can see I just let the mag act how it wants to act. I start with a solid packed part of the shadow, and then I whip that mag out in a direction that's going to leave me a little line or kind of that black cut, and it's naturally going to flick out as I kind of push the mag and whip that out sideways. Pay special attention to the direction of my mag at all times here, as that's where a lot of the keys are. And remind yourself that an area isn't going to look perfect straight away. You want it to start off looking rougher, maybe too blurry, and maybe some of the forms slightly off. At the start, that's completely fine because you want to keep rendering as you go. Even if I had a 23 mag here, all I'm going to do is look, where can this mag fit the whole way up the panel. You can see I haven't changed my mag the whole time I've been tattooing this hair section because I want to start off just really seeing where can this mag fit in, making sure that I'm not going to go smaller than until I'm either finished with the black value or I'm finished with the mag. And then on my last kind of stages of the render, maybe then I can bring in a liner. But I don't even think I use a liner when I'm tattooing this hair. The mag does a perfect job. You can see obviously just while this black's in, it looks a little bit rough. But then when I get some of that kind of mid-tone color, some of that darker color, really helping to kind of continue on the story of these gradients, kind of pushing that shadow out and completing the render on these forms, the hair just starts to really just take shape and look a lot more complete to a much higher standard. Now also, as you already know, we have created our online community, the Real Tattoo Academy, and I really just want to point out the fact that if my free content here has helped you guys out so much, then just imagine what we can achieve together when we do start to kind of really make an action plan for yourself and get some daily habits in that are really going to turn you into the artist that you want to be. Because it really is just reps with all of this and having a plan that is going to make you take control of your own tattoo career rather than just kind of running around without too much guidance, I'm sure you'll still get far, but just like all industries, coaching really brings results. And being part of a community like this, surrounded by like-minded other artists, is really going to help you hold yourself accountable to really achieving what you can. And this is really coming from experience, as I've been tattooing for over 10 years now, and looking back on my career, it really seems like maybe just the last 2 years or even 6 months is kind of how it feels like, as I keep really improving and getting stricter on myself and my habits, that only just now am I really taking control of my career. And I know that my success and where I will end up really isn't going to be an accident, because I am working super hard at the moment. It's really leaving the confidence that there's no way that I can't like majorly succeed now, you know? And that's really just coming from like trusting the process. And it's more like the confidence is in the plan and in my kind of daily habits and how I have my week structured out, that like no one could really fail, especially end up worse off from these actions. So it's hardly even like, you don't even have to have confidence in yourself anymore. You can just have confidence in this process. So a lot of that is, yeah, obviously going to come from being part of this community, surrounding yourself with all of these like-minded people. But also there is exclusive content. So just like these videos, they're super in-depth and they're just exclusive for that kind of subscription community. And that cost is just $1 a day. I really wanted something that was manageable so that everyone can get there, you know. It's $29.99 a month. So yeah, just $1 a day, you know. I don't want to see anyone kind of not being able to show up for a money reason. That's definitely not going to be the case. So there's a form there currently that's going to help you guys out with making your own daily habits. I'll also post up an example of mine so that you guys can see that, and maybe make something that's relative. And I'll kind of, talk about a little bit of that on the page a bit more as well. But just briefly, I know that I want to try and be the best tattoo artist that I can. So I've implemented some things that are relevant to that. I want to plan and reflect for 10 minutes a day. Now that might be looking at artists' work that I really like the look of, breaking that down a little bit, seeing their use of values, how highly saturated it is, their level of opaques, maybe the machine that they're using and things like that. So a little bit of time to kind of study there. I want to draw or paint 2 days a week. So I'm going to make that, for example, a Wednesday, Thursday, so that I can use that same paint palette without that drying, because the oil paint can get a little bit tacky if you leave it too long. So there's my days for painting. And I know by doing that weekly, I'm now painting a lot. You know, at the moment I might paint once a month, if that, and my painting work still looks solid. So if I start painting even more, the amount of confidence that that's going to bring into my tattooing, and obviously my paint work is going to kind of get crazy. And it's also working silently towards, I always wanted to do a gallery event. So soon I'm going to have enough oil paintings to make that possible as well. And that will kind of be accidentally. All I'm doing is focusing on my daily tasks, and I'm going to stumble across hitting all of these goals. Now I'm also going to be designing one concept a day, and that's in line with kind of my dream stuff that I want to be tattooing all the time. So over time, I'm going to have a folder on my Instagram that all my clients can see these really cool concepts, and if they feel like grabbing one, I can get one. Or worst case scenario, I offer them to one of my friends for like half price, and then I get to tattoo something really sick. But it's showing my audience, it's putting that idea in front of them, that like, oh, you guys can get this really sick stuff tattooed. You don't have to stick to your kind of basic stuff. Like, look at what we can achieve, you know? And then that's building my portfolio. After you've tattooed 5 of them, you're now that guy who tattoos that subject. You know what I mean? Then I also have some little things in there, like work for an hour, kind of late at night once the kids have gone to bed, on things like these videos, maybe the community, just putting in extra work to really put myself in the 1%. I've got some training in the morning, some audiobook stuff. You know, you can really never know too much and have like too much of a healthy mindset. So these are just a few things that I know is just gonna completely changed my life, really, just by taking these small actions daily. And that's really why I set this community up, is because I started having all these breakthroughs and coming up with all these ideas. Like, I don't want to hold this to myself. I want to help other people improve. And that's what this community is all about. We have guidance from everyone, but obviously heavily guidance from myself. There is also coaching calls that you can get. Maybe you want a hand making your daily habit chart, or you just want more information and insight about some tattoo things. Maybe you're running into problems, or you're just not happy with how your work is looking. We can really sit down, have a one-on-one coaching call, and come up with a plan of action on how to make this area a strong point for you. And it just really excites me. Like, tattooing hasn't been a area where there's been like common coaching and stuff like that, like all these other kind of high performance sports and things like that. Imagine the artists that we're going to see who take things this seriously. You know, your top sports players, they train all the time. They have coaches for multiple different things. So I think a little bit of guidance in this area that has been so kind of like closed off and secretive for so long is really going to help people excel. So yeah, if this does sound like a little bit of you, do jump in there. The link is in the description down below, as well as the bio on my page. And yeah, I'd love to see you guys there. And another thing, just before I stop annoying you guys talking about this, one of the people that's in the community at the moment was like, yeah, this is sick. I just recently paid hundreds for a seminar. I heard the guy talk for 20 minutes and then watched him tattoo in silence for 4 hours. And that's such a good point. You know, the real quality of these seminars that you buy online and these packs, like, they aren't cheap, and they really do just very quickly let you down. You know, you kind of buy this seminar. The artist has given you faith and kind of made you think that from buying this pack, you are really going to improve. But it just so often lets you down. But I really do want to be one of the artists that's standing up to this, really raising the bar on quality kind of educational stuff that's out there for tattoo artists. If someone wants to learn, then they should be able to do that. You know, there's tons of free stuff on YouTube, but there are going to be people who want to take it to the next level, maybe have regular coaching calls, making sure that they really are wasting no time during their tattoo career and becoming the best artist that they are. And this can be all levels of tattooing, not just advanced people really wanting to hone in on different areas, maybe tattoo eyes better, better portraits or better color work, things like that. This could be as simple as someone wanting to get into the tattoo industry. Maybe they're really good at tattooing fake skin, or maybe not even good at tattooing fake skin, but they want to get into a tattoo studio. As a studio owner and from 10 years in the industry, I can definitely help you guys put together a nice presentable portfolio and kind of how to act on walking through the door of a studio and artistically turn you from a liability to the studio to an asset. But enough of all that. Yeah, let's not talk about this anymore. I'll probably just talk about the tattoo now. So you can see I'm using a 7 round liner extra tight and a black value from starting off the eye. Just quickly lining things out, and I want to do this in one pass because you can see the quality of my stencil isn't very high, but I still don't want to overuse my black. So you can see I'll leave a few eyelashes here where I'm going to get a really deep value to kind of push over that scratched in black for that area. And some of the stuff we missed while I was talking so much. Sorry about that, guys. So we obviously completed the lips. Just like a lot of my areas, I did start off with a 7 round liner, and I really just mapped that in, starting from kind of a mid-range color to map it in. Then I went through and packed my black, and then I started shaping the lip a lot more. Obviously making sure that I left a lot of really nice space for my white highlights to sit, and then shaping kind of that form a lot with a much deeper hue red and a darker value. Now you can see with this real-time footage here with my 7 round liner, I'm really just taking my time to get this black packed in well. Now, even though I've been tattooing for 10 years, I know more than anyone that you cannot skip past the fundamentals. Having solid fundamentals means a solid tattoo. So whenever I put in some area of solid black, I make sure that I really take my time and don't rush that process. Like I talk about so often, this black value is really the anchor to all of these other values coming from, and really setting the contrast of this piece. Now for packing some of these slightly larger areas, I'm using my 7 brown shader just to more efficiently pack that in without overworking with a liner, doing a little bit more damage than I'd like. That round shader is going to really effectively get that in, and then allow for some small passes with a mag as well, just to ensure that that is packed really well. And also really effective tattooing. I only want to pick up this black value once per area. I don't want to be having to jump around too much, constantly coming back to kind of fix or maybe repack areas. I just take my time on whatever process I'm doing. I try and just do it well the first pass, and then I can move on in my process, knowing that that area is completely ticked off and now I don't need to think about it. I'm putting in the dark values here of the eyebrow, and I'm using my kind of common eyebrow technique. I'm really just kind of, I guess you could say, feathering and letting the mag do the work there on creating these individual kind of strokes, and then allowing this shadow side to kind of curve over a little bit more as well. Now you can see I had that dark value in the cartridge, but I made it a little bit earthier and softer looking just by adding a slight hit of a yellow hue. So just being able to mix that previous value in my cartridge without rinsing that out. Now I'm starting to add in some of these warmer and richer values to the eyes, so that really deep red there. It's going to be a really nice addition to rolling out of the shadows of this eye, as a lot of the information around there is still sitting really warm, and a lot of the values, anything past a mid value in this portrait, really does have that warm, deep appearance. And there's a useful tip for you lying there as well. If I do at any point have any trouble on creating a color or identifying that color, I can think what's going on in the value range of my reference here. If it is anything past a mid, I know that it's probably sitting a little bit warmer with a kind of deep red hue, and yeah, a slightly darker value. Anything lighter, there are a few different variants. There is a slight hit of yellow in some of these, and then some of these kind of really deep shadows is a little bit more of a earthier kind of grayed out skin tone as well. And that value is kind of the one that we saw before, that's rolling out of the eyebrows. And there is a little bit of it kind of on the bridge of the nose as well, kind of where the eyes are meeting the nose, sorry. Now you can see we're starting to saturate the face. So with all the black done in the eyes and a lot of that completed, I can more confidently work down in this section now, because I'm not going to have any areas that are going to risk contaminating this. And you'll see later on, I kind of stop saturating at about eye height so that I can get the black in at the hair stage. Really just making sure that, yeah, there's no risk of contaminating when I'm wiping any black value down and into the portrait. And also when I am wiping, rather than just wiping down and dragging down the face, I have tried to kind of wipe off to the side of the portrait. Now you can see with the values that I'm using, I can see what's in my cartridge that is the accurate color, but a few seconds after putting this into the skin, a lot of that blood kind of pushes through and you get a bit of redness in that area. It's almost like it kind of hides that color for a little bit, and it's really hard to identify what's going on. So you do need to have a lot of confidence in the value that is in your cartridge, because very quickly you're not going to be able to see that for about 5 minutes, especially the accuracy of the kind of hue and all these small kind of adjustments that should be made on the color. You can kind of identify your values fairly easy, but yeah, these small hues really do disappear for a while, especially the kind of light kind of yellow hue, that color there is taking a while to appear. So, and I kind of leave that till last though. I'm really just working on my warmer values. Here you can see a little bit there is a little bit of that yellow hue there, but it's still slightly warmer. Like this is obviously worked down from like a micro adjustment from having a dirty cartridge with the warmer values, and that's a great way for all of your colors to look really relevant, is just keeping your cartridge a little bit dirty, as there's going to be a little bit of like kind of that like remnants of the DNA from the last color in that cartridge there to help make all your values look really kind of tied in as one piece. It's not like there's one color in your portrait that is just jumping out from the rest and not looking like it's meant to be there. So you can see here there is this kind of, that yellow hue that's really sitting in my lighter range of the value. And I am heavily using this value to do a lot of the saturating, as the value that's sitting the closest to being kind of my light or under that mid-range. So it's really common in this portrait work, the same as if it was a black and gray piece. And you'll see my kind of hand speed and technique here on how I really like to softly saturate and kind of keep sculpting and keep building up. These kind of longer, softer passes do a lot less damage than kind of your tight packing circles would traditionally do. So yeah, it doesn't kind of harm the skin as much, just allowing for a little bit more passes and that one extra pass of kind of color adjustment before doing any damage there. So yeah, it's a really nice technique. You'll see just nice, slow, soft, kind of long passes, the full length of the gradient, the full length of where I want to see that color. You can see here I'm using a really nice kind of high chroma pink there as well, kind of sitting as a mid value. And it is structuring a little bit of this cheek as well. You can see there's a really nice kind of highlight that's sitting under this darker value. You'll really be able to see that as I get to my lighter values as well. And I'm working from both sides of this gradient because it's kind of the mid-range from the side of the portrait and then that point from the nose. In between the two is where it's tricky to find that value. So rather than really trying to narrow down and find it, I can whip kind of the information from my point A and point B, and then I end up pretty much with that value sitting in between as these two kind of values and colors have crossed paths, and I can more accurately create that color that I'm seeing and then pack that in there. There won't be much work left to do after you put in kind of your shadow side from each of these edges. You're just going to have a small amount of work on the in-between, really just joining these two gradients. That's probably another good piece of information that I can share with you as well. I'm sure all artists run into obstacles with their tattoos. Maybe they get to a point where they're not quite fully understanding what's going on. Quite often, if you just jump past that, move a little bit higher in your portrait and start to kind of always just do what you can, you know? So move up a little bit, tattoo the next area perfectly, and it's going to help give you the information on what's going on. And you can apply that into the area kind of below that, or now kind of work from the solid form that you've created above your troubled area, and then start building the shading kind of coming down from that towards your kind of, like we're calling it, the troubled area. And it's really going to help you identify, and before you know it, that kind of issue has sorted itself out. If I give you guys one more piece of solid information, there's going to be no need for you guys to ever learn anything else in your lives, especially about tattooing. Man, I'm really just spitting out free game here. But yeah, so there's now no need to sign up to the online community. You guys pretty much know everything, you know? So that's good. But that's definitely one point as well. Like, what a good opportunity that's there for you guys, just if you want to take things a little bit more seriously on really being on track and having a real path to follow. There's another thing that I want to use, like, the community to its fullest as well, and create an area on the Discord where we can all kind of back each other's Instagram posts and stuff, so that we can all have a lot more confidence when we're posting. And if we kind of put our post in the community Discord, then everyone can rush over and leave a comment. I can see so many really talented tattoo artists, and there's just not a lot happening on their Instagram pages, you know? I'll see a post from a lot of you guys, and it's a really solid tattoo, but there's just no engagement there. So if we can kind of help kind of boost the little algorithm, and everyone can go over, like, save the post, leave a comment and like it, you know, we can all just really back each other and help boost each other's work to get a little bit more out there as well. Now you can see the tattoo is starting to really take shape, and I've created a lot of these forms with an estimated value. Now I've left a little bit of room for the chroma to increase in all of these areas, so you can see now some of these areas that I want to stand out a little bit more, or maybe have a slightly more accurate hue to what was previously applied. I can go through and add that now. I have this really nice kind of deep peach value that's sitting really nice as the shadow area of this side of the face. The other side is slightly more shaded, and I do need to kind of darken that value a little bit more. One of my other pieces of advice when tattooing color is quite often you'll have a look at your reference and you'll dip into a few colors and you'll create a kind of color and the value, all of that. But it might be slightly off what you're trying to achieve. Now, rather than completely stopping and pulling the handbrake up on kind of getting this ink into the skin, and now you're going to have to rinse out this needle and recreate this sitting there for a minute, rather than just naturally flowing with things, I like to just look then again at my cartridge, have a look at this value that I've created, and instead now look back at my reference and just see where this color and value is sitting, because you've probably made something that's accurate to your tattoo reference because it's been made up from the information that you're looking at. It might just be slightly off what you're needing. So then I'll apply that into the area where I see that it can go. So now I'm not delaying anything. I don't have to rinse out my needle. And better yet, now I have kind of half the ink left in my cartridge, meaning that it's going to mix a little bit more kind of fragilely and now accurately into creating the value and color that I had missed in my initial mix. So now I could have identified, yeah, maybe this value is a little bit too dark, or the chroma is too high, or I need to adjust the hue. So now with that little bit of ink left in the cartridge, I can make those slight adjustment hits, and pretty much 100% of the time I have made the correct color and value now. Now, one observation you guys will obviously have is that the black and gray pieces below this color portrait is healed. Now, I knew that the color portrait here would definitely be quite detailed and take quite a long time to tattoo. So I never wanted to put myself in a position where I was trying to tattoo these black and gray pieces well and then start into my color piece. Even leaving kind of, maybe if I only got halfway through the color piece, completing up to the neck area, I would then have a different chain of thought when getting into the portrait, and maybe those values might be slightly different. So I really do like to tackle areas that are kind of all relevant. So I did a black and gray session, and then we got into our color. I would always want to tattoo kind of all the relevant colors at the same time. Like if this was massive on the back, I would probably map it out, maybe do all my blacks, then all my warm values, so that all of these colors are very relevant throughout the piece. We're not seeing any differences there. One thing that I really want to get into next as well is some more really realistic portraits. Now you can see here that the saturation's a little bit higher than what it should be for something that I would consider extremely realistic. It is more like kind of almost a poster of a pinup or that kind of digital art. The color is really high in chroma, but I would love to get into some of these pieces that are almost made up of like all these off-whites. Like you can see these extremely realistic pieces that Victoria Lee does. The saturation level is low. My color work used to not be so, I would say, like high in chroma, not so colorful, because I was always more into like something that's truly realistic. I think I will try and return there, but obviously for this piece being a pin-up girl, you want it to be relative to the theme as well, and that is kind of like the bright red cheeks and having that high level of chroma and high level of saturation. So I am happy with the piece, but yeah, to challenge myself, I would really like to tattoo something made up from a lot more like off-white kind of values. Some of the portrait work that she's doing is amazing. I'd just love to see if I'm capable of doing it. And before taking on something like that, especially because it is quite often like family portraits, kids and stuff, I'd make sure that I painted the piece first, just so I'm very aware and and capable of making all the correct colors and values, because I think a lot of the time in these values, when they're put in the skin, you won't even be able to see them for probably 10 minutes. Like I was saying earlier, with some of these really sensitive colors and values, the blood is just going to rush to the skin and really kind of distort that true color. So it would be quite hard to identify, and quite an interesting process. But if you had painted the piece previously, you would be so confident in creating your values and colors that I think it would help to tackle that side of it. But let me know down in the comments as well, if when you guys see color pieces, do you like seeing like that full deep richness of the color, or do you like things just looking a little bit more realistic? And there is kind of benefits to tattooing both. I do think like the fresh result of these off-whites is amazing, but over here in New Zealand, the sun is pretty harsh, so a lot of these off-white values might not sit very well, although they'll look so realistic for the photo. It's always these richer and higher level of chroma colors that do stand the test of time a little bit better over here. Yeah, there's quite a funny story as well. Like I was saying, I do prefer and traditionally almost downplay that level of chroma and make things slightly more realistic, because I feel like the whole piece looks so relevant when all colors are washed down a little bit, and it also gives you a chance to make one color really bright and have a huge effect over the whole tattoo. But I was tattooing at a convention and I had done heaps, like I feel like I had tattooed the biggest piece for a solo artist there, not like a collab piece. And one of the artists was like, "Wow, you're smashing it," and he's a sick tattooist, like he's really good. And he was like, "Yeah, the piece is looking really good." And he was standing there with some other people from the studio, and they're a highly ranked studio here in New Zealand. So I was like, "Yep, pretty stoked about that," and happy with where I was at with the piece as well, which is the most important thing. And then he was like, "Man, when you put that yellow in, it's just gonna look sick." And all I was thinking to myself was like, "Oh, I've already put the yellow in." But I was just, I turned to him and I was like, "Yeah, bro, yeah, like it's really gonna, change the piece and bring a lot of life to it." And so then, yeah, I just grabbed kind of like the brightest yellow, the richest yellow that I had, and just smashed it over this kind of washed down, more realistic yellow that I had applied. And I think that was just down to his preference. Like, I look at his work and his stuff is like, when he tattoos color, it's almost like he's like, if your color isn't like bright and full, it's not a color piece. You know what I mean? Like that's his kind of theory on it all. His color work is, yeah, extremely bright, and it's really impressive to look at. I do wonder if any of that decisions on the kind of richness of his pigments is to being in New Zealand, the sun's really harsh over here, so damages tattoos really quickly. And for that same reason, obviously, everyone ends up a little bit more tanned. I see some of these amazing color artists, especially in like Europe, where I'm just like, man, the canvas is just yeah, it looks like such a white kind of blank space. Like, I'm sure anything would look good. And a lot of these artists, like some of them hardly even touch the black values, but here we really need it to kind of like anchor everything down. Now I'm starting to really add a lot of the more accurate chromas to this piece, making some of these areas really nice and warm, and making some of my more kind of final adjustments when rendering this form. And I guess that's the thing with color as well, and why traditionally it would take a little bit longer than tattooing black and gray. Black and gray, your main focus is really just on your forms and what value you're using, but color is so much more fragile. You have a lot more adjustments to make, like your hue, and lightening colors can't really just be done by adding white, because then you're adjusting all your other variables with the color, your hue, your chroma, like saturating, all of that. I don't know about you guys, but I keep seeing like reels on Instagram about color artists saying like, oh, is the color not packing well, or something, or before you tattoo color, make sure you check if your color is opaque or transparent. Like that's pretty pretty crazy to me. I don't really take the time to check anything like that. They're like, rub it on your glove and then see if you can kind of see through it. I think the fundamental that I have from dipping into 3 colors at least really before touching the skin, it always kind of gets the ink into like that nice viscosity and something that is really filling for the skin. I feel like maybe mixing something that, yeah, maybe is more opaque. But then by the time I've dipped into my other values, they've really filled that pigment in where it was like originally maybe a little bit, yeah, more like transparent or something, and filled it into a much more solid looking color and something that kind of just saturates well in the skin every time. Like you can see here, I'm using a very light value, but it is super solid. Another thing that can help that is just using a good quality brand of ink. And I was going to say some brands of color inks that I don't like, but then I was thinking if they hit me up for a sponsorship, because when you get sponsored by a color company, they send you their full range like almost annually, so you're making like a bit of money just from having that. So I'm actually keen to get ink from any brand, and I love all of them, they're all solid, but one of the best brands and the one that I really try and stick with is Fusion. I've also had really good results from world famous, I think it is. There's Chevelle Red is like really good. I love that color. But yeah, if you want to know a bad brand of color to buy, then you can book a coaching call and I'll tell you the truth about everything. But another disclaimer, if you are an ink company watching this, I only want to deal with kind of the top brands as well. There's so many brands that hit me up and want to work kind of together, like me kind of, I guess like push their product for them. But that's really like not what I want this channel to be about. I want everything to be like unbiased and honest. So yeah, I only kind of want to deal with, yeah, the best thing, I guess, like top 10 companies. I'm definitely not going to push any dodgy inks into my clients and risk any heels or anything like that. Now you can see I'm progressing further through the piece, so now I can really start working on my extra light values. Now this is the really nice part about color. Even your lightest values have these really nice hits of color that really adds so much life to the piece. Whereas with black and gray, usually they're just used for achieving your level of saturation. Now with some of those lighter values pushed in, I can really start getting back to work on completing these eyes. So I'm using a really nice deep and high chroma red. With a lot of my shadows sitting really warm in this piece, it really makes these eyes tied into the portrait well. And this deep red value really rolls so nicely out of that black pigment that we had packed. And letting that value carry on to some of the shaded areas around that and the darker values like that hair piece that we had just hit, and increasing the kind of saturation level of the red as we get more into the corner of the eye there as well. So letting that red whip into our black a little bit and also roll into part of the shadow just to give it a little bit of warmth there as well. The skin tone sitting in the eye a little bit does make it look really nice and realistic, although I will roll through later on and grey that kind of shadow down from the top eyelid out a little bit more. But you can see this value here that I have, it isn't white, it's a nice off-white that is making the eye look really nice and realistic. Just like with your black and grey pieces, you don't leave the eye just white. You do want a light or extra light value to get in there and saturate, and especially show the roundness of the eye and leave that nice bit of room for your highlight to sit. Without any saturation in the eye, your highlights just won't look very effective and the area won't look complete. Now for the fun part, we're on to adding the color into the eyes. So I do start off with my darkest and highest chroma color here. So that is a really nice rich kind of emerald green. And you can really overuse your darker colors, especially on the eyes. I want to overuse it in a way where I can get my next lighter value to pass and brush into my dark area. So I want my darkest values to extend to creating a gradient, kind of working its way down into a extra light. So now I have a real nice kind of turquoise addition to that emerald green, really lightening and softening that down a little bit and serving as more of a highlight. You can see I'm pretty happy to pass that over where we have put that real deep emerald green value. And I'll also kind of fully saturate, just like I did with that last value. I now want my extra light or a white highlight to sit over these colors, and the white can still make a nice color by mixing in the skin. With that area now looking pretty nice and complete, I can now step down to the nose area with a round shader and really focus on getting these final little renders in, where previously a lot of this work was just magged in, apart from the initial little map in. So I'm really focusing on like a final pass here. So I want the color to be extremely accurate. I need the level of chroma to be really accurate, and just that level of sharpness as well, making sure that that value is all right and that that information is kind of really sculpting the nose nicely there. And just like you've seen throughout this whole tattoo, just after tattooing the nose, I was able to jump up to the eyebrow a little bit with that exact same value. The color that you're seeing in one area will be repeated somewhere else. So you really can just jump around with the same color in your cartridge, tattooing multiple different areas. Even if it's not the final kind of color or the exact adjustment that you need there, it could serve as a nice kind of base or underpass for a more accurate color that could pass over that later on. So yeah, I'd really just recommend, like, just like painting, you really just want to get into the skin. You don't want to be overthinking. If you're at that stage where you're kind of taking that advice and things aren't really going the right way, then maybe you've kind of jumped the gun a little bit on the subject matter that you're tattooing. Like, you wouldn't want your first color piece to be a color portrait unless you've got years of maybe painting experience. Like even I said, after 10 years of tattooing, if I didn't feel comfortable tattooing something, I would never say no to tattooing it, but I would make sure that by the time the booking rolls around, I am over kind of ready and skilled to take on the piece, making sure that I never let my client down. So now we're going to have a little bit of footage where I'm tattooing with a larger mag, and I'm just going to let the audio of the machine play out, because I do think that there is something to learn from hearing how the cartridge is hitting the skin and how that machine's reacting. Alright, so with a lot of our extra lights now put in, we can get onto our white highlights. But have a look at how that forehead area is looking. It's looking quite like aggravated and just red. We're not able to see a lot of these nice kind of fragile hues that we placed in the area. So just have a look at it now and then see how that starts to transform, especially with the piece in the healed photo. Or even the work below that, all these same kind of hues and colors were used in that area. But now we're on to our white highlights. So I did start off using my 7 round liner extra tight with the main goal of having a really sharp and precise white highlight. But I do end up switching over to a 7 round shader, which I wish I did sooner, just because it packed so much more effectively that even though the area was slightly larger, it actually really suited the piece and overall just punched that white in that much better. I found that even after a few minutes with this white with the 7 round liner, it really lost that effect and it didn't look like it was saturating in the skin well. So perhaps that pigment just wanted a 7 round shader to kind of put that in a little bit better. That larger grouping really did a much better job. So you can see I'm still using the 7 here now actually, but yeah, I just really wasn't happy with it at the end. I now move on to my blunt kind of highlights. This being a color piece, I do need the piece to be fully saturated for it to look complete. Otherwise my highlighted areas are gonna actually not sit right in the value range, and there's gonna be a piece kind of missing in this puzzle. I do think that when doing a color piece, you should make the whole piece color and fully saturate that area. And I think traditionally with how I tattoo my black and gray, I kind of have that similar approach as well. My work is quite highly saturated. I don't often like to have much kind of blank space sitting in the skin. And I'm really just packing this white in the same way that I've been working throughout this whole tattoo session. Just these nice, smooth, kind of calmer passes. And then I move on to that 7 round shader like I was talking about right here. And you can see the difference straight away. It really does fully saturate these small pockets that I've left for the white to sit in, and really does just make that white look really nice and effective and sharp, as I think the white highlight should in realistic tattooing. Now I'm moving on to the bow area and just kind of working on pushing in these red squares. I'm just using my round shader to scratch them in. The reference actually looks super rough, I guess just being kind of more of an AI styled reference. It was an area that wasn't perfected. So yeah, I just kind of cleaned up the squares a little bit and just repeated this process throughout there. Starting off with my kind of mid or ideal red, that's taking up a lot of that space, and then making some final adjustments with a much darker hue, and that coming up shortly as well. And you can see now the forehead area is also starting to settle down a lot more, starting to see a little bit more of these fragile yellow hits and some of these really soft lighter colors that are sitting there as well. And then we're on to tattooing our black and the last of our hair. So I'm really just working in these mid values and working my way up into my lighter values, and now we can have a look at our finished result.
Alright guys, thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. I hope that you guys all really enjoyed it and that there was something there that you can now apply into your own tattooing. Make sure that you have a look in the description at our online community, which is the Tattoo Academy, and I'll see you guys in the next video.